My name is John Ray. I'm a Marist father, and I was born in New Zealand and have spent most of my life in that country. That's where I've ministered most of all. And the main work in which I've been involved is the preaching of parish missions and retreats. And I'd like to share some of the things that I've seen Jesus do for people when we've prayed with them for healing. One time, my colleague, Father Bruce McGill, who was a Redemptorist father, and myself, were working just outside the city of Auckland. A lady came to us and told us that her daughter was a violinist, but she had crushed 2 fingers of her left hand in a bus door and was no longer able to play the violin. She had intense pain in those fingers whenever she tried. For 10 months this had gone on, and they'd been to doctors, to specialists, and also to physiotherapists, but there'd been not much improvement. The girl would play the violin, and then after about 10 minutes the pain would be so strong that tears would be running down her face. They came for prayer. I prayed a very simple prayer, holding her left hand in my hands, asking the Lord not only to heal the fingers, but also that he would give her expert technique and allow her to go as far in violin playing as he wanted her to go, even to the very top. Then my colleague, Father Bruce, anointed her fingers with oil, and a few days later we left that place, travelled 300 miles and began another parish mission. About 5 days later there was a phone call from the city of Auckland. It was a reporter from a free newspaper asking for details, and she said, "I'd like you to tell me more about Sarah McCracken's healing." I said, "Who's Sarah McCracken?" And she said, "Oh, that's that young violinist whom you prayed with. She's been healed." So I thanked the lady for letting me know, because this was the first word we'd had of the healing. I said, "I'm sorry, I don't know anymore. You'll have to ask the girl's mother." About 5 days after that, there was another phone call from Auckland, this time a man, a reporter for one of the large Sunday national papers. "What can you tell us about Sarah McCracken's healing?" And all I could say to him was, "Well, all I know is that she's been healed." "To what do you attribute this healing?" he said. And I said, "Well, that's easy, Jesus Christ." There was dead silence on the phone. Then he spoke up again and said, "We'd like a photograph." Well, there'd been bad press for priests in our papers, so I thought quickly and prayed and said, "Good." It was about time there was good news about priests anyway. So they sent a photographer along, and on the following Sunday there in this national paper was a picture of the 2 of us alongside another picture of Sarah. What we hadn't known was that this child was a violin prodigy. At the age of 7, she had appeared on national television. We don't watch much television, we knew nothing about her. They'd raised money to send her to the Yehudi Menuhin School for Violinists in Surrey in England, and it was while she was there that she'd crushed the fingers. So here was a person who was really a celebrity. We knew nothing about her, but she was healed. And I believe that God received the glory then and there. Later, the mother let us know that the child herself wasn't expecting a healing, but when I'd prayed with her and asked for expert technique, then Sarah came to faith, because unlike most other child violinists, she did not have very good technique. And when I was able to say something, I didn't realize I was saying it, that was about her personally, then she came to this faith that enabled her to be healed. About a year later, we invited Sarah and her mother to Wellington. It was about a year after the healing, and they spoke and Sarah played at an outreach we conducted from our Catholic cathedral. On that occasion, Sarah again appeared in the newspaper, and also she was interviewed on radio. This, of course, was a great way of getting publicity for Jesus. The only thing that really matters is that people know that he is alive and well today, and that as he went around the countries of Galilee and Judea doing good all those centuries ago, he still does good today, healing as he healed all those centuries ago. I've always had a great compassion for children who are ill, particularly the handicapped in body and the handicapped in mind. One night in the healing line in the second parish, there was a mother holding a baby in her arms, and the baby, to my way of seeing things, was obviously suffering from Down syndrome. I prayed with the child, asked the mother the child's name. Suliana, she said. In the Fijian language, they don't have a J, For us, the name would be Juliana. So I promised the lady that I would pray for Juliana by name every day after that. I was back there 13 months later, happened to be saying a mass in the parish, and this woman came forward, again in the healing line, who looked vaguely familiar to me. And then she said, "This is Juliana, Father." And I looked at the child. It didn't have Down syndrome at all. And I was quite puzzled. I thought, I must have made a mistake. Maybe the lighting wasn't good in the church that night when I prayed 13 months earlier. However, my time in Fiji went by. On the last evening, in that same parish church, we had a commemorative mass for a former missionary who had died in Ireland. We were lined up to go into the church for this mass when one of the priests said to me, "There's a man here who wants to speak to you." And here was this man with Juliana in his arms, Juliana's father. So I said to him, "What did the doctor say to you when Juliana was born?" "Father," he replied, "the doctor told us that she was suffering from Down syndrome. Now that child is perfectly well." It was an extraordinary thing to see, and I recalled how in the gospel Jesus was always surrounded with children. "Let the little children come to me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven." God does miracles today. It was wonderful to see a healing from a genetic defect. Back in my own country, I one time received a letter from a Carmelite nun who asked me that if I was ever visiting a particular city, would I call on her brother, whose son, aged 17, was suffering from a deep-seated brain tumor. He had lost all power in his body, couldn't move his legs, couldn't move his right arm, had slight movement in his left arm, was unable to speak, and communicated with his parents by answering questions. They framed their questions for a yes or no answer, and he replied yes with one blink of his eyes and no with two blinks, like that. So it so happened that I was in that city a few months later, and with another priest and two religious sisters, we visited the home. There was Ben, slumped before the TV. The TV was turned off. We knelt around his armchair and we prayed with him and then went away. I didn't reach my hometown for about a week after that, but when I arrived, there was a letter from the Carmelite. The very night of the day we'd prayed with Ben, he had phoned his aunt in a city quite some distance away. He had been healed to some extent. The healing continued over the next few months, and eventually I received a letter from Ben in which he told me that he was now walking with the aid of a stick. He was back at school, and this was the clincher as far as I was concerned. He said, "I was very fascinated by the way in which you prayed, so I've started praying myself." It seems to me that the Lord works his signs and wonders today, as he did in days gone by, as a means of evangelizing people, of giving them the good news that he is the Saviour. If he is going to save us from small things, illnesses and diseases, he is certainly going to save us in the major way, save us for heaven. I was in Samoa to conduct a 3-day seminar on charismatic gifts earlier this present year. On the second night of the seminar, when we were praying following the teaching, I was led to pray not only for the people in the church, but for families and friends over the waters. There are many Samoans who live outside Western Samoa. There are many here in America, and there are many in Australia and in New Zealand. One of the gentlemen present, when I made this prayer, claimed it for his wife and daughter who were in New Zealand. The daughter was suffering from leukemia. The mother had taken her to my own country for treatment. So he claimed the prayer, and I learnt later that the following night he phoned to New Zealand, and his wife was able to tell him that they had returned to the doctor and examinations showed that there was no sign of leukemia whatever. Again, a healing of a child, a healing from a very dread disease. Jesus is alive. Jesus